What makes an amazing 10 out of 10 nature photography destination is quite different for different people. People might be more wildlife focused or more general travel photography focused, making memories, telling stories, or they might be more landscape focused. I love Alaska as probably one of the single best nature photography destinations because it offers it all, well above just about anywhere else I've traveled on this planet. It's got incredible wildlife, brown bears, aka grizzly bears. It's got the forests. It's got the mountains. It's got unique scenes with high contrast for cool black and white photography. Heck, it's even got glaciers. It's got amazing hiking trails for great, great travel photography. So when I think about all the destinations around the world that I would rank as far as extraordinary nature photography destinations, Alaska's got to be near the top of my list because of the plethora of opportunities. Not just because it's great wildlife, not just because it's great landscapes and great travel photography, but because it puts it all together, it smushes it to become really an 11 out of 10 place because it's got it all. I'm here to talk about a handful of different photo opportunities that you're very likely to get if you go to the wilds of Alaska. I'm going to teach you how to edit each and every one of them to show you the variety of not just the landscapes, the wildlife, and opportunities for photography, but also the variety of editing techniques I might use in a single photo album for a single trip across a variety of photo opportunities. So let's dive in, let's switch over to my screen here, and I'll show you what I'm going to edit today. Okay, we're gonna start off with a pretty epic mountain scene. It doesn't look epic yet, of course, because we're going to edit it, but this is in Denali National Park. It's got the glacier, it's got the mountains, it's got the color, but this isn't all coming out in the raw. So let's go ahead and open it and see how we might edit this shot. Well, like I often do, starting with a great photo, I know it's got the components. I'm gonna go ahead and hit auto and just see what it does. Okay, so immediately I can tell that the software wants to darken it. It thinks it's overly bright. I agree with it, but it's bringing out a lot of the rich black tones and a lot of the really interesting colors and textures of the sky. So because we have a varied lighting scenario here, I'm probably not going to stick with auto, but I do like what it's giving me, and I realize that I need to probably do some control of the blacks. I need to dehaze it. I need to reduce the highlights, and I need to probably boost the contrast. So we're going to do that probably manually across the board for starters. I'm immediately going to come over here and reduce the blacks. Blacks are one of the best ways to reduce that haze in the atmosphere. You can always come down to the dehaze slider, and that's going to do it as well. Let's just kind of undo that and go back to dehaze just as an example. But you'll notice that it does quite a bit more. Some of the blue tones are coming out. It's easy to overcook it quite a bit. So we're just going to come back to 0 here. I'm going to hover over and just hit down for those small little adjustments, but I am going to come down to blacks. A lot of what dehaze does is with the blacks. So let's do a smaller adjustment there. I'm going to boost contrast. I like the way that that's looking. I noticed the shot is quite warm, so I might treat that in a little bit, but I'm going to also reduce the highlights, paying particular attention to see if I do this global edit across all highlights, if it's going to change the foreground elements too much. So let's go ahead and drop down highlights a lot, and it really doesn't. See, it's really just treating the sky. So I could come in and mask the sky, but oftentimes there's a little bit of fringing that happens if you do just a sky edit, because let's be frank, you're setting a very specific margin if you come over to just a sky mask. So we're just going to come over here and do that. And I'm going to just play with the whites to see what happens when I reduce the whites. So that makes it a little bit less bright, but frankly, I like the brightness, so I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to come down to a little bit of a global dehaze. I'm going to overcook it for starters, and then I'm going to come back. So I notice now that when I overcook, quote unquote, the whole thing with a global edit, the greens get too saturated. There's some blues really appearing here in the mountains. So I don't really like that, but I do like what it does to the sky. So I'm going to come back here, undo that, and then I am going to mask the sky for at least part of my edits. So I come over to my tool here, I'm going to mask the sky, I'm going to come down to dehaze, and we're just going to dehaze the sky. And I like that quite a bit. I like the moodiness, I like the color coming out. We could go crazy and mess with the color of the sky as well and make it really, dark and moody, or this actually makes it look more like a bluebird day. But pay attention to here on the fringe. Notice how there's a little bit of, dare I say, kind of like not a haloing, but it's I don't really like what the fringe looks like. And the more edits I do, the more that's gonna be pronounced. So I like the general steely color. If I change the color temperature of this shot, I'm probably gonna change the whole thing. So I'll come back over here. I noticed that bringing some blue in was quite nice. For the kick of it, or for the heck of it, I'm gonna hit auto and just see what it does. So it definitely blues it up. But I'm gonna hit undo because it also brings some more greens, and I like the rosy color throughout the shot. I'm seeing some natural vignetting on the corners here, which is kind of nice. And you know, this glacier in this middle part of the scene is of course really where the eye first looks. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a radial filter on just the middle part of the scene. Bring this up a little bit, and I'm going to entertain doing some more edits of just that middle part. So I really like the contrast. I'm gonna boost some contrast. I think clarity does a really nice job on landscapes because it just makes things pronounced more. I might do a little bit more dehaze just to see what happens. It is kind of nice, but it's very, very noticeable. So I'm really not gonna mess with that. And that's gonna be about the end of my shot. The one more thing I could do is come over here and do a little bit of vignetting just to bring some of the, yeah, it's kind of nice, but you start to notice that it's like looking through binoculars or a scope. I think it does bring the eye down to the middle part of the frame, but that's gonna be pretty much it for this shot. I could come over to vibrance and do a little bit of that. Ooh, and that's actually quite nice. Notice how it doesn't blow out the oranges and the greens too much. But really the last thing is I'm probably gonna come down here and just, you know, 6750 is pretty high as far as a white balance. Like that's definitely gonna be in the warm end of the spectrum. So I'm just gonna come down here and knowing that 6000 is still pretty high. Oh, and it gets pretty darn blue. So I'm gonna, you know, I'm just barely going down at all. And then I'm gonna see what happens. Again, editing is a lot about experimentation. We can see instant changes. We don't have to develop film, and just see what happens when I boost the contrast even more. And it's not degrading the shot. I think it's actually bringing some of the lights out of this foreground quite a bit. And I like that a lot as well. So then the final thing I'll do is I might wish, because this is a nice flat landscape, I might wish to crop it to a 16:9, which is a little bit wider. It's gonna squish it down. It's gonna take some of that sky and or foreground out of it, like some of the bottom part of the frame. Having the openness here is really good for things like graphic design, if you wish to do a presentation or a slideshow or you're submitting to magazines, because all this area up top is still aesthetic. It doesn't need to be out of the photo, but it's a great place for text. It's a great place for other graphic elements. So I do really like it. As I'm looking at it more, I'm noticing that the vibrance I think is a little bit overcooked. So I'm just gonna go half. I'm gonna go down to like 15. And you notice how it still has some nice vibrance here, but yeah, it lessens it a little bit. You never know if someone's looking on a different computer or a different screen, if you're printing it off. When you start to notice it on your screen, others may notice it even more on their screen. So finding a good middle ground is really, really helpful. But I'll show you that cropping thing. I'm just going to, well, don't want to do that. I'm just going to come over here, hit C for crop, and I'm going to go to 16:9. And notice how it allows me a little more flexibility if I want mostly landscape. I really like the angles, the curvature of the earth here. So I think that having, you know, this glacier sort of in the upper middle, the intersecting points here are kind of at what I believe to be focal points. You know, the mountains, the ridge, focal points down here, the beautiful colors of that kind of orangey terrain. I like that a lot. So I'm just gonna hit over to E. That's gonna be back to my main editing pane, and that's gonna be it. That's my ending photo. Again, depending on how I'm gonna use this, I might do a standard 3:2 crop or the 16:9. But as far as a photo out of the camera that I would love to post or print or do something with, this is pretty darn good. Okay, so let's move over to the next one. It's this is a making lemonade kind of shot. This was another day in Denali that was completely socked in, as Denali can be and often is. But I used this to get some really nice even lighting. I got some soft reflections in this little pond, this little lake here. But let's see what we can do with this. So I am thinking, well, as always, let's go ahead and hit auto. It darkens it nicely. You know, is this my ending point? Not so much. Do I need to reduce the highlights and all this other stuff and increase the shadows? I don't think so. Again, the more you do, the more it takes away from the photo. So don't do edits needlessly. I'm gonna come back here. I know I definitely want to cut through that haze a little bit. You might embrace the haze and say, you know what? I like the soft wispy feel. But to me, I think it needs some more contrast. I think it needs to drop the blacks. And then again, I'm just gonna come over here to the Magic Dehaze slider and see what it does. It darkens things quite a bit. And if this is the look you're going for, I think can be quite nice. You might pair that with a little bit of shadow lightening, and notice how it seems to exacerbate this area. So I don't really want the eyes to focus and go to this first. So I'm just gonna undo that shadow thing. And then I'm gonna come over here and I'm just gonna treat these trees because I might wanna bring out a little bit more light. So I'm just gonna do a radial filter across this. It's nice and feathered, so it's not gonna look like a harsh edit, but I might come over here and just boost the shadows a little bit. It's relatively unnoticeable, but you can see how it really turns into a nice look. Then the final thing would be, do I want to do any sort of saturation? Remember, greens are very, very susceptible to oversaturation. So although I'm going to try it, caveat, I may not stick with it. And vibrance is a bit of a smart saturation slider, so it does handle the greens and oranges, which the eye perceives as dramatically different much quicker. And I might just do vibrance for first. Oh, but that changes the yellows. If you are the kind of photographer that likes that richness, that might be the way to go. But I think mixed with this steely, kind of cold, foggy looking day, I think it turns it into something that I don't want personally. A much more heavy-handed version, which I think I'm gonna like even less, is gonna be saturation. And once again, it brings out those yellows quite a bit. I will show you something here that if we, I don't think I'm gonna keep this, but if we come over here, notice that with the heavy saturation, you are bringing out some of the purples and blues and some of the oranges here. And I do quite like that. I think it brings out some of the background a little bit more. But again, to me, it's too yellow. You might think it's too green, but I can tell you the yellow is actually what's coming out here. That is the undesirable part. So I might come over here to my color mixer and just reduce the saturations of the yellows. And notice how it's still kind of saturated, but if you start to, let's go to extremes, you go all the way down, that took most of the saturation out. So again, yellows are a big part of it, but I might just keep it right there. Again, plus 30 on an image that doesn't really need to be saturated might be a bit much, but I'm gonna keep it for demonstration purposes because I do think the photo is quite nice in the end. And then, like I said, oftentimes I do really like clarity. And so I'm just gonna boost the clarity a little bit. Now you might think that perhaps you only want to boost the clarity on this middle section, and that would be a good choice as well. Just do a radial filter or maybe even mask this area some other way, like with a brush tool, because you kind of might want the wispiness of the foreground. But nevertheless, 15, 20, something like that. I think it just boosts a little bit. I'm just going to zoom in, see how it just kind of really increases the texture and, dare I say, sharpness of the photo, or it looks a little bit sharper because of that clarity slider. Clarity does a lot more than just sharpening, but it's pretty cool. I like this a lot. So we can look at a before and after, very, very foggy. I don't think you'd want to keep this image the way it is. And then just a little bit more robust. How you treat the blacks and the contrast is really up to you and the vibe you want to go for, but those are the options I'm sticking with. Now I'm back to my bridge screen here, and I am noticing that this could be a really cool black and white photo. So what I like to do here is I'll just select the photo and I'll just hit Command D to duplicate it. You see here, copy. I'm going to go back into this and I'm going to switch to black and white. We'll see what that looks like. I'm not going to change these for now. I will very likely change the editing settings because black and white, not only does it probably fit this photo really well, but it holds and is capable of way more editing than color. So I might exacerbate or exaggerate some of these things. Let's do black and white. So I like that a lot, but to me, I want to boost the contrast in the blacks even more. I want to really cut through that haze. And the quickest way to do so is, of course, dehaze. But at the same time, it's making this background a lot more defined. So should I maybe do a gradient mask? I think so. So I think I'm going to go for a gradient, just hitting G. I'm going to swipe up from the bottom and I'm going to fade it into the top because I don't really want to treat the background. I like how wispy it is personally, but then what's going to happen is all this bottom stuff is going to get most of the treatment, and then the middle is going to fade into no treatment with my dehaze slider. So let's see what that looks like. It's really, you can see it's really pronouncing the foreground, but that's kind of nice for the reflection. It's dramatic, it's big, it's bold. That might be the option here. So I'm going to hit E to come back to the main editing pane. I might do another global edit, just boosting contrast a little bit more. Let's play with shadows. Why not? This is going to give it more like a sort of a metallic, even more dramatic, dynamic range. And I do like that quite a bit. It's got the lights, it's got the darks. Because we're dealing with a relatively high key photo here, meaning it is by traditional histogram standards a little bit too bright, but I might want to even exaggerate that with a little bit of white. So I'm just going to go all the way to the right. I really like what that does. I think it makes, this would be a really cool wall photo. This would be a really cool mood photo for like a hotel or for a certain room in your house where you're just going for something big, bold, and dramatic. I might play around a little more with the blacks and lessen those, but notice how, that makes it almost like a infrared winter scene. So I might keep those down pretty low. If I go too low, they just get way too dark. But I really like that a lot for a mood evoking black and white shot. So we're just gonna keep that there. So remember, it's always fun to play with black and white. It's just Control D to duplicate it so you're not editing the same shot. Of course, you can do various iterations in the same photo in Lightroom the same way. And yeah, color, black and white, 2 options for me. Moving on to glaciers. Okay, what a cool shot. Now, I was in a moving boat with a telephoto lens, and I saw these 2 gravel planes, I guess they call them, because of these big tires that can land on gravel beaches. Obviously, it's askew, so I need to change a little bit of the angle there. But yeah, I really like this shot. I'm going to come over here, hit C. I'm gonna come over here, and I know that if I hit up, the left side is gonna go up, and that's pretty good right there. Might do a little bit more. There we go. And then the question is for here is, how do I exaggerate and treat the background? Because like I want to showcase the real rough, jagged texture of the glacier itself. And then what do I do about the bottom? Do I keep this relatively uninteresting bottom? It kind of overweighs the photo, in my opinion, because we have this smaller sliver of black sand beach with a bigger sliver of water. So what I'm actually going to do is bring this up a little bit in my cropping to make the water and the beach equal. Okay. And I'm noticing I need to go a little bit more up just to straighten it. And I like that a lot because the eye looks at it and it's not weighting the water or the gravel more. You just get these 2 kind of weird, unexpected colors and textures out of the scene. I also know I probably want to treat the planes. I want to bring out some light because that's where the eye goes. There's a subject. I want to treat them like I would wildlife, actually. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, and I hope that through some subject masking, it's just going to mask those. And all I really want to do is bring out the shadows and maybe lighten it a little bit. So I'm just going to do a little bit of that. You got to be careful here. But then if you come back to the main editing pane and then zoom out, then you kind of notice nicely, as I fuddle with the program, sometimes it's actually nice to zoom out a lot just to see what it would look like as a thumbnail or as a social post. And notice how you get some nice treatment around the planes themselves to really bring them out as the dominant subjects. Then the final thing I'm gonna do, let's come back to normal size, is I'm gonna mess around with the background because I wanna make it a little bit more foreboding, a little bit more exaggerated. And I'm going to come over here. We could mask the subject and then inverse it, but I'm just gonna see what happens if I mask the background. Yeah, so that's pretty much the same thing as masking the subject and inversing it. That's fine. We'll stick with that for now. And then I know that, clarity is really a great thing. I know that dehaze is gonna be a great thing. This is far away, so it's gonna naturally have some haze, but also because it's such a complex meta slider, like it does a lot of things all in one slider, it did actually bring out some of the blacks as well as some of the blues here. So I like that quite a bit. I might do some vibrance or saturation. Because I'm doing a mask, you can't do vibrance at the same time. So we'll just be stuck with saturation. And that's, let's exaggerate it. It gets really blue, but depending on what you're using it for, you might want to have a really dominant blue tone in the scene. Like this would be really great for a room that needs a blue photo in it. So it's not necessarily bad to be overcooking it here in saturation. Because we saw what it looked like before and after, I think it looks a little bit overcooked, a little bit fake. So I'm just gonna drop it down to half. So it was at 28, let's go to like 13, 14, something like that. Didn't make a huge change. I'm gonna hit E to come back to my main editing pane. And I do like that quite a bit. I haven't touched any of these other things. I didn't do auto, so let's just hit auto for the sake of it. We can just Command Z to undo it. It brings out the whites, okay? So it brings out the whites quite a bit, increases exposure a little bit. It makes me think maybe I should come back and do a global edit of whites. And that's exactly what I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna boost contrast just a little bit. And then, let's just exaggerate the whites quite a bit. I like that a lot. Now, see, when I boosted contrast, it's great, but I do think it makes the photo at least in my eyes, in my mind, a little bit darker overall. So I'm probably gonna drop that down, and that's my ending shot. I like it. So let's move on here. Really cool traveler shot here, hiking through meadows. We got fireweed. It's a cloudy day, so the sky is not super interesting. I might do something with that, but let's go ahead and hit auto for beginning because there's so much green. You gotta be so careful with color in these shots. That goes for white balance. It goes for saturation. The auto did boost the vibrance, which, you know, isn't a bad thing. It's a very vibrant looking shot, or at least it brings out more vibrance from what is a very flat lighting kind of day. But let's go ahead and undo that just to see, you know, I don't think it really needs vibrance, but instead I'm going to come over here and really just kind of just bring it to where where I think an even exposure would be. Contrast will make it a little bit better. And honestly, that's about all I'm going to do. I'm not going to change this very much because this is a storytelling shot. It's a shot of travelers. We got nice smiles and faces. We've got the fireweed here. The only thing I might do, because this is a little bit bottom weighted of a shot, and we've got quite a bit of open sky here. Even if I clip it beyond this line right here, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. So I might just hit C, bring it down a little bit, actually go under that mountain. Or you know what? Sometimes intentionality is great, and I might put it right at that line. So let's just be really exact there and see how that looks. That's pretty cool. I'll be honest, my eye, probably because I just edited it, but perhaps the eye of the viewer is going to notice this perfection here and be like, what is going on there? So I'm actually going to bring it down a little bit further, get these folks, especially their faces, inside that middle box. And I don't think that makes a huge difference here. I might straighten it a little bit and bring that left side up. Small adjustments. And I like that a lot. I'm noticing a lot of blue here, so I could come over here to auto. Too much yellow. I don't like that. And there we go. I think that's a shot. We got really nice lighting on them, so I don't need to mask the subject and brighten them at all. That's pretty good for me. Okay, moving on, we've got this really cool bear shot. It's a little bit overexposed, but it's got some really nice fringing on the fur, and I'm gonna turn this into a bit more of a wildlife portrait. Oftentimes when I'm photographing action or behaviors or single wildlife subjects, especially with, you know, 100 or 400, I might shoot it with the subject in the middle of the frame, knowing I'm gonna crop after the fact. So I'm going to use my grid lines here, and then I'm going to just kind of compose it so that the bear is looking into the open space. The subject is on one of those crosshairs, and I really like that shot. I could come even closer because we've got a lot of room to play, and that's kind of nice, but then it gets some of the background out. So I'm just gonna back up a little bit. It's always easier for you yourself when you're printing a photo or posting a photo or sending it to a graphic designer for them to do something. It's always easier for them to zoom in a little bit. They can't ever zoom out, right? So once you're done, you're done. You can't zoom out, but they can always zoom in a little bit. And I do like this shot. I'm gonna hit auto just to see what it does for me. It of course darkens things, but I think I'm gonna darken it a lot more. I don't really need the shadows. Yeah, so I'm just gonna undo it. There's obviously some haze going on here. It's a little bit bright for me. So I am going to probably start with blacks because there is haze. That does it nicely. I'm gonna adjust exposure a little bit. And then I can tell already because of the strong reflections here, I'm gonna treat the bottom part of the frame quite a bit. And this is where good old gradient mask. Let's just come up from the bottom to the top. I'm gonna move it so the bear gets really nicely treated. And then we're going to decrease light quite a bit. So I'm gonna get a lot of those darks kind of rescued here. And I'm gonna bring it down to sort of a normal exposure for this bottom part. Now that obviously darkens the bear quite a bit, but we can come in here and just zoom in on your photo a little bit to do some kind of spot treatment. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty, like, I like the look here because there are some good parts of the bear exposed, but I might come in here and do a subject mask as well. And I'm sure it's gonna outline the subject very nicely. It did, this is miraculous. And I'm going to play around a little bit. I am going to boost the shadows just a little bit. I'm going to saturate it just a little bit, bring out that glow. I don't really want to oversaturate the bear, but just bring out the glow. And then maybe a little bit of contrast, and then maybe a little bit of clarity. and texture just to make sure that that bear is ultra sharp. And we'll zoom in, and that's looking pretty good. We'll zoom out. I like to zoom way out just to see, do I like this shot? And yes, would I prefer to crop in a bit more to take this white, kind of white water out of it? I think I would, but that's a pretty darn good shot from my point of view. But you know, just for the sake of this, let's go ahead and crop one more time and make more of a wildlife portrait out of it. And I'm just gonna bring the bear's eyes slightly inside that intersecting point, and that's a pretty cool shot. Notice how it's starting to get noisy and grainy. Like that's quite a bit of noise and grain. So depending on how I'm gonna use this, I might want to denoise the shot. I'm not gonna take the time to do that here, but that might be one consideration. I also might come over to K, decrease the size of this, and just brush a little bit on the bear's face and eyes, just to bring a little bit more light out of this area. And it starts to look washed out, but if I balance it with blacks, it just, I don't know, it makes me feel good to do a little bit of treatment on any wildlife's face when I have this wildlife portrait look. And that's pretty much the ending shot for me. I will say one thing that I'm probably not going to keep, but if I come back to my masks, go back to the bear mask, I might increase the color temperature to a little bit warmer because it's going to naturally bring out those yellows. Oh, I do like that a little bit more without the traditional overbaked saturation look. And I like that. Let's zoom out to see if we like the overall vibe. It's pretty darn cool. I like that shot. So I'm keeping it. Here's the shot. Here's the before and after as far as color goes. Yeah, this is cool. I like this shot. We're keeping it. Okay, I've got one more bear shot. You can see very much overexposed, but we're gonna fix that pretty easily. We've preserved enough data over here. We might lose some data here. We'll hit auto, see what it does. Oh, and see how much it's rescued. That is just fantastic. So I might actually keep that, to be honest, because like that shot looks good. If I need to, I might bring the shadows down a little bit, but frankly, I like bringing out the shadows and all this. I like the look of the water. I'm gonna show you a trick here, because the water is part of the star of the show here. So I think what I might actually do is come over here. This is gonna be a global edit, but I'm gonna reduce the blue luminance just to bring out a little bit more definition in the water here, and then saturation up the blues. And notice how this makes a really nice contrast or juxtaposition between the blue of the water and then the brown / yellow of the bears. I'm gonna boost those yellows through some selective saturation, but I really like the way the water's looking. So let's go back here and look at the bears themselves. And we're gonna come over here and warm them up. I love doing contrast of warm to cool. So warm bears, cool water. I don't think it's overcooked. If I need it to, I can always come back to selective color and reduce the saturation of the yellows. In fact, we'll show you what that looks like. If I were to, I mean, it still is not that bad because it really pronounces the subject. But let's see what this looks like. We'll come back to our main editing pane, come over to saturation, and just drop the yellows a little bit and see how it really rescues the shot. If the yellows are pronounced, it just starts to look fake, but just bring them down a little bit, I think is quite nice. And then the ending thing I'll do, coming back to my mask, is just boost the shadows a teeny touch more, just to make sure that they are well seen. And the final thing is, since this bear is looking at me, he gets a face treatment. He gets a glow up, and then we're just going to probably increase the shadows, probably increase the contrast, and then just a touch. I'm gonna hover over this and hit up, just a touch of brightening, and see how you start to look at his face a little bit more. I'm actually noticing some of the magentas are coming out, so I might come over here and just go down just to bring magentas down slightly. And then there you go. That's the shot. Of course, you could crop this any which way. I really like the shot as is. This is how I would turn this into someone, because I want them to play with it. You can definitely crop into it. You know, it's got the clarity, it's got the right definition, it's got the megapixels. So I'm not gonna crop into it before I finalize the photo, knowing that for whatever I use it for going forward, doing something like a crop, you know, into these bears might be kind of nice, you know, like that. But then you gotta wonder, well, do I really wanna cut off the rest of this bear here? So I'm just gonna hit undo, because this is really the shot that I want. So yeah, let's book it. Let's save that one before and after. Yeah, quite a bit of rescuing, but love the shot. I personally like the colors. You may find that you want a more muted color or might want to boost the dehaze or saturation a little bit just to make more of a pronounced effect on the bears, but pretty good as is. Okay, so we covered a lot in these photos. You saw the breadth of possibilities in Alaska. You saw some various photo editing techniques. And I'll be honest, these techniques I showed you today between the blue luminance and selective saturation, touching with white balance, radial and gradient masks versus brush masks, cropping, these are the things that I'm thinking about. I don't think I really use much else in Camera Raw or Lightroom across all my photography. So you get a pretty deep dive into my techniques today. And you also get a pretty deep dive into the wonders of Alaska. If you enjoy learning photo editing techniques in real time, consider subscribing to the channel. I've got this and many other types of videos coming out all the time. So looking forward to having you in the audience and looking forward to talking to you next time. Thanks for joining, folks.